Hi, it's Mitch from PickDawgz.com, and it's Tuesday, May 28th, 2024. We're doing our first half of tonight's NBA game, as well as the first 5 innings picks for all of today's Major League Baseball card. We've got 16 Major League Baseball games today, with yesterday's rainout in New York of the Dodgers-Mets game, so we've got a double header there, which we'll cover, as well as tonight's Western Conference Final Game 4. Of course, the way we always do in these videos as well, we talk about what happened on today in history. Try to go sports history, but sometimes we go music as well. You guys know I love my tunes, but the thing is, today, Willie Mays in 1951, Say Hey Kid, recorded his first hit of what was one of the greatest Major League careers of all time. So we'll say hey to Willie and, commemorate today as the day he got his first hit. But of course, let's commemorate the day as the day we crushed the books. Let's get right into today's action. Let's get it started with Game 4 of the Western Conference NBA Finals. It's the Dallas Mavericks hosting the Minnesota Timberwolves. Of course, we all know the Mavericks lead this series 3-0 and are in full control, as no team has lost a 3-0 lead in the NBA in Western Conference Finals history, but that doesn't mean they're out of the woods yet. One thing we know, we're looking at the first half of this game in particular, is that we have two of the worst first half teams in the NBA going well beyond back before this season as well. But this season, both of them have stunk it up. If you bet the first half money line on the Mavs and Timberwolves, as you can see on the graphics that I put on the screen, you have really lost a lot of money. But the only thing that really does come in for these teams, because they are so bad in the first half, generally not a lot of scoring for either of them. Of course, this has been a high scoring series. Every game's gone over, but for the first half of this game, we're going to try for the under, and that'll be our pick for the first half. For our first game, we head to Citi Field in New York, where the Mets are taking on the Dodgers. It's a makeup game for yesterday's rainout, but the thing is that the pitching matchups did not stay the same, so they changed. So it's Tyler McGill for the Mets against Tyler Glasnow for the Dodgers. Two guys named Tyler, two different spellings. Tyler Glasnow gets regarded like he's one of the top pitchers in baseball, but his career numbers show he's a mid-4 ERA type pitcher. Meanwhile, on the other side of it is Tyler McGill, who's got a 3.0 ERA coming into this one. Very, very limited action. The Dodgers bats have gone simply cold on this road trip, hitting just 207 versus righties and 207 versus lefties over their last 10 games, despite the 242 versus righties and 267 versus lefties on the season. The Mets hitting righties at 243, so I certainly give the edge to the Mets there, but at the same time, I don't think anybody's going to be doing a lot of hitting in this first game. I think it's a boring pick, but I'm going to roll with the under in the first 5 of the Mets-Dodgers Game 1. For our next game, we go to Camden Yards in Baltimore, where the Orioles are hosting the Boston Red Sox. I couldn't have been any more wrong yesterday thinking that the Red Sox were going to come out and hit Cole Irvin, because the Orioles have been hitting the baseball, but a lot of the action has happened late into games. We've got Grayson Rodriguez on the mound for the Orioles, and it's Brian Bayo on the mound for the Red Sox. We know that Bayo has top of the rotation type stuff when he's healthy, but he hasn't ever looked healthy so far this season. Meanwhile, Rodriguez's numbers are getting increasingly better. I've honestly gone back and forth on this game a lot like I did yesterday, where it's just kind of a little tough to figure out, because the Red Sox are a better road team and the Orioles seem to be a better road team as well than they are at home, and neither of these teams really hitting a lot early. Both these teams hitting 243 over the last 10 games versus right-handed pitching. Thing is, I think Rodriguez has been just a little bit stronger. It's a lean to the Orioles, and that'll be my pick for the first 5 of this game. We go to Comerica Park in Detroit, where the Tigers are hosting the Pittsburgh Pirates. This is one of those series where it's an interleague series, but these teams have played pretty much regularly even before they've gone to the balanced schedule, which we've seen the last 2 seasons. These were seen as the regional rivals for some reason, and the Pirates have absolutely owned the Tigers in this rivalry, especially these games in Detroit, where they've won 10 of the last 13 meetings. Jared Jones on the mound for the Pirates. It's Tarek Skubal on the mound for the Tigers. The Pirates hitting 224 versus left-handed pitching over their last 10 games, and the Tigers hitting 289 versus righties. Both these pitchers in a slight regression. Of course, Jones, the rookie, doesn't, generally when rookies start to slide, it's generally a lot more drastic than something that happens for a veteran. We know Skubal has great stuff. When he misses his spots, though, he always pays the price. The thing is, I kind of like him better than Jones here, and the Tigers lineup. It'll be the Tigers first 5 for my pick in this game. For our next game, we head to Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati, where the Reds are taking on the St. Louis Cardinals. It's Abbott on the mound for the Reds and Kyle Gibson on the mound for the Cardinals. Kyle Gibson now in that regression mode, heading right into those numbers that we're used to seeing from him, with a 4.20 ERA over his last 3 starts, starting to rise from that 3.81 for the season. Meanwhile, Abbott, the lefty for Cincinnati, 2.68 ERA on the season and 1.42 ERA over his last 3 games. The Cardinals have been hitting the ball significantly better than the Reds, but they hit the ball better from the right side of the plate versus righties than versus lefties at 223 versus 286 over the last 10 games. Honestly, the Reds aren't hitting righties or lefties recently, but everybody hits Kyle Gibson, and we know how that works. I know Gibson looked a little bit better earlier this season, but now he looks exactly like the Gibson we've seen before. I'm not buying what he's selling. I'm taking the Reds first 5 as my pick for this game. For our next game, we head to Tampa Bay, where the Rays are taking on the Oakland A's. It is Littell on the mound for the Rays and Spence on the mound for the A's. The thing is, Littell has really not played well this season. 3.42 ERA for the season and 4.41 over his last 3 starts. But Spence, he's certainly no bargain either. When you look at the way these teams are hitting the ball, especially recently, the Rays just not hitting righties at all. The A's not hitting lefties, but of course Littell is a righty, and the A's hitting 252 versus right-handed pitching in their recent games. The thing is that for the Tampa Bay Rays, as bad as they've been, it really hasn't been that bad. Just a couple of games under 500. And we know how it works for the Tampa Bay Rays, and that is, they always seem to get it done in those winnable games. So the A's are going to sneak some wins in, but probably not in this series. I also like the Rays to get out early. I'll take the Rays first 5 as my pick in this game. For our next game, we go back to Citi Field in New York, where the Mets are taking on the Dodgers for Game 2 of their doubleheader. It is Gavin Stone on the bump for the Dodgers and Jose Quintana on the mound for the Mets. Of course, Quintana, crafty veteran at this point in his career, and a little less crafty than he's been in the past, checking in with a 5.13 ERA and a 4.96 through his last 3 starts, while Gavin Stone has been solid as a rock, 3.60 ERA for the season, 2.84 over his last 3 games. Of course, the Dodgers not hitting the ball versus righties or lefties, hitting just 207 against each of those through their last 10 games, but for the season, they've hit lefties significantly better at 267. The Dodgers have absolutely owned the Mets, 31-14 in the last 45 meetings, 27-10 in their last 37 in New York. And I have to say, looking at this matchup, I don't think that changes at all. We're going to take the Dodgers first 5 in Game 2 of the doubleheader. For our next game, we head to Atlanta, where the Braves are taking on the Washington Nationals for Game 2 of their series. It was all Nationals in Game 1, and the Braves look to rebound as they send Max Fried to the hill. The lefty, generally a slow starter to the season, but this year actually pitching pretty well recently, as his 3.38 ERA for the season, but 1.77 over his last 3 starts. Jake Irvin on the bump for the Nats. He had that great performance against the Dodgers, but really outside of that, been pretty mundane performances. 3.79 ERA for the season, which isn't bad, and 3.93 over his last 3 starts. The issue here that I have with the Braves is that, besides the gigantic price, is that the Nationals facing lefties hitting 298 over their last 10 games. It is just 221 for the season, and the Braves hitting 247 over their last 10 versus righties, 249 for the season. The Braves bats have gone silent. It's way too good odds to pass up. I'll take the Nationals first 5 for this game. For our next game, we head to Target Field in Minnesota, where the Twins are hosting the Royals. It was all Twins in Game 1 of the series, as the Royals were a gigantic underdog in that game, and the line looked funny because the Royals had been playing the much better baseball going in. It's one of those games where you look at it and you just say, man, the public must have gotten really crushed on that one. But we look at it today and we see Simeon Woods Richardson on the mound for the Twins. It's Cole Reagans on the mound for the Royals. Two good young pitchers going at it. Reagans 3.26 ERA over his last 3 starts. Simeon Woods Richardson 2.57 ERA for the season, but 3.77 over his last 3 starts. Not a guy that generally goes deep into games either. The Royals are certainly hitting the ball better than the Twins, especially over the last 10 games where they're hitting righties at 285. Meanwhile, the Twins hitting lefties at 244. I still don't think either of these teams hit these pitchers. I'm going to go with the under first 5 as my pick for this game. For our next game, we head to Chicago, the South Side, where the White Sox are taking on the Blue Jays. The White Sox might amid another tailspin this season. They've had several of them as they've only won 15 games all season long. Meanwhile, for the Blue Jays, trying to make up some ground here, but still well below 500, 24-29 heading into this game. That's after yesterday's win over the White Sox. Kevin Gausman on the bump for the Blue Jays, and it's Mike Clevinger on the mound for the White Sox. Gausman always gets these big prices. Not always, but sometimes he just gets priced crazy when you look at the game odds for this thing. I mean, he's minus 225. The guy has a 6 ERA over his last 3 starts and a 4.47 for the season. Clevinger 6.75 for the season, so he's no gem either. But I think in this one, when you look at the pure value here on the White Sox in this game against a guy with a 6 ERA, they're a must play. I'm taking the White Sox first 5 as my pick for this game. For our next game, we go to Milwaukee, where the Cubs are visiting the Milwaukee Brewers. Cubs bats have gone absolutely silent recently. The Brewers, back home from that road trip, looked pretty solid yesterday. And of course, that Milwaukee crowd, they did not give Craig Counsell a nice welcome home greeting, as he's now the manager of the Cubs after deserting the Brewers. Thing is Ben Brown on the mound for this one for the Cubs. It's Freddie Peralta on the mound for the Brewers. Peralta definitely hit a little bump in the road as his ERA's gone 3.81 for the season to 4.50 over his last 3 starts. But last start, he was lights out. Brown, not a guy who's going deep into the game, so it's a bullpen game for the Cubs, and the Cubs bullpen checks in with a 4.40 ERA coming into this one. But the Cubs just hitting 198 versus righties over the last 10 games, 142 versus lefties, and the Brewers 261 versus right-handed pitching. Look for the Brew Crew to get it done again. We'll take the Brewers in the first 5 of this game. For our next game, we head to Arizona, where the Diamondbacks are hosting the Texas Rangers. It's a rematch of last year's World Series, as the Diamondbacks got pretty battered by the Rangers in that World Series last year. And the Rangers, of course, are wearing those rings. But in this one, Brandon Pfaadt on the mound for the D-backs, and it's Dane Dunning on the mound for the Rangers. What a difference a year makes, but really not all that much. Both these teams were wild card teams a year ago, and both these teams sit below 500 right now, but still within striking distance of making the postseason. And for the Rangers, in an American League West that nobody wants it, they are well within reach of winning the division again once they start to get healthy, but they're not healthy right now. They're hitting just 203 versus right-handed pitching over their last 10 games compared to 243 for the season. I'll tell you, the bats are just absolutely crying. Meanwhile, the D-backs 261 versus righties. I think in this one, I'm going to roll with the Diamondbacks to win the first 5 innings, and that'll be my pick for this game. For our next game, we head to Coors Field in Colorado, where the Guardians are visiting the Rockies. Yesterday, boy, the Guardians got out to that early lead, 3-0, then it was 4-1, and before you knew it, the Rockies with 6 runs, including a home run by Charlie Blackmon, who had multiple extra base hits yesterday. You know, the Guardians have absolutely stunk it up in recent games in Coors Field, just 3-9 in their last 12 in Colorado. And the thing is that, you know, the Rockies have been hit and miss this season. You know, they've been streaky good and streaky bad. And, you know, when they start running good like they have been recently, kind of look out. Ryan Feltner gets the ball for the Rockies, and it's Tristan McKenzie on the mound for the Guardians. The Rockies are hitting right-handed pitching over their last 10 games at 242. The Guardians at 232 and 244 for the season. I don't really trust the Rockies bullpen, but that doesn't factor here. I think they get to McKenzie and continue rolling. I'll take the Rockies first 5 as my pick for this game. For our next game, we head to the Big A in Anaheim, where the Angels are hosting the New York Yankees. The Angels have absolutely owned the Yankees in games played in Anaheim, winning the last 4 meetings of these two teams played out there. We got Nestor Cortes Jr. on the mound for the Yankees. He's got a 3.29 ERA and 2.08 over his last 3 starts. And it's Griffin Canning on the mound for the Angels with a 5.05 ERA, but all the way down to 1.62 over his last 3 starts. I was on the fade Canning bandwagon early and often earlier this season, but as of late, he has certainly pitched a lot better, and we've kind of jumped on board and have made some good money at some good prices with him. You know, the Angels are hitting left-handed pitching over their last 10 games at 302, 273 for the season, so it's no fluke. Meanwhile, the Yankees, of course, they're crushing everything, 267 versus righties. But I'll tell you what, I like the way Canning's pitching. I like the way the Angels play the Yankees, especially at home. I'll take them here at a nice price, and that'll be my pick for this game. For our next game, we head to Petco Park in San Diego, where the Padres are taking on the Marlins. Matt Waldron on the bump for the Padres. It's Jesus Luzardo on the mound for the Marlins. You know, if you watched yesterday's game, it was one of those tight, low-scoring games, a lot like we said that it would be on the early show. And the thing is, a lot of people expected a lot more from that, but it certainly just didn't develop that way. And what eventually happened in that game is the Marlins actually walked in the winning run in that game in the 2-1 loss. It was about as bad as it gets, but it was very, very competitive. And Luzardo, he started the season horribly, but he's got a .92 ERA over his last 3 starts. Waldron, 4.86 for the season, 2.81 over his last 3 starts. Both these teams are hitting the ball pretty effectively. You know, the Padres hitting lefties at 256 over their last 10. The Marlins hitting righties at 264 over the last 10. But I don't think we see a lot of runs here either. I like the under in the Marlins-Padres as our pick for the first 5 of this game. For our next game, we head to Seattle, where the Mariners are taking on the Houston Astros. You know, on Monday night, the Mariners got out on Framber Valdez early, and the Astros had a lot of chances in that game and could not convert on any of them. And even with Montero in there late for the Astros, doing what he does, which is making a mess of everything, the Mariners still couldn't scratch any more runs across the plate. But the Astros just 4-12 in their last 16 against the Mariners, certainly a problem. Luis Castillo on the mound for the Mariners, Hunter Brown on the mound for the Astros. Hunter Brown, of course, was terrible early this season. His numbers are certainly improving, but still 4.70 over his last 3 starts. Meanwhile, Castillo with a 3.18 over his last 3, a little higher than his career numbers here, in 3.31. I still don't like the way that the Mariners are hitting the baseball. I think the Astros take advantage of some of their chances, get a little revenge. I'm going to take the Astros in the first 5 innings of this game. For our final game for today's show, we head to San Francisco, where the Giants are taking on the Phillies. Zach Wheeler listed as the starter for the Phillies. The Giants have yet to list their starter. Now, the last time that through the rotation in this spot, they went with a bullpen game. It was Miller who started, but he only went 1 1/3 innings, or 1 2/3 innings, and in that game against Pittsburgh and Skeens. But the thing is, we could probably expect the Giants to do that, and if not, well, what we'll do is we'll update you on our live show in the morning, so you can tune in for that. But the thing is, when we look at the way these are going, Zach Wheeler certainly, he's been a tough luck guy. He has, top of the rotation stuff, and that's why he lives there. But the Phillies hitting just 234 versus righties, while the Giants over their last 10 games hitting 292 versus right-handed pitching. The Phillies certainly have the bats in the lineup to do some damage here, but the Giants absolutely rolling. When they win, they just seem to continue to win and string them together, and I think they get to Wheeler here. I'll take the Giants as my pick for the first 5 in this game. That wraps up today's first half and first 5 inning picks. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow to go through the schedule one more time as we continue with this video series. Of course, it's still a relatively new video series. I'm enjoying doing it, and I hope that you guys enjoy it as well. If you're looking for my best bets and best bets from the world's best handicappers, 100% documented picks, you can see all of our records on all of our picks that we've ever made there. head on over to PickDawgz.com and click on the Premium Picks tab. You can use the discount code PICK for 15% off. If you're interested in PickDawgz gear like I wear, this zip up that I wear, or the PickDawgz hat, or even some other cool stuff that we have, like those nice Nike zip ups and other things like that, by all means check out the merch tab at PickDawgz.com. This is Mitch. Thanks for joining me again. We'll see you tomorrow with more first halves and first 5 innings. And be sure to check out all of our videos here on our PickDawgz YouTube channel.